The coordinates don't exist on any map I know. The cabin was there. I saw it. I flew right up to the window. And then I saw myself looking back at the camera. Not a reflection. Me. Sitting inside. Exhausted. Holding a controller. Staring up at my own drone. I'm still sitting in my truck right now. There's something on the roof. And I don't want to get out to check what it is. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've been doing freelance drone surveys for 5 years. It's not glamorous work. Mostly I'm mapping timber plots, checking for illegal logging in the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest. Long drives down unmarked forest roads, 6 hours of flight footage, a report nobody reads. Rinse and repeat. I use a high-end industrial quad, thermal sensor, 4K gimbal, the kind of setup that doesn't miss much. I'm good at this job. I'm methodical. I don't spook easily. Last Tuesday, a private firm hired me to map a valley that hadn't been surveyed since the late 90s. According to every GIS source and satellite image I had, there was nothing in that sector. No roads, no structures, nothing man-made for at least 30 miles. Dense pine forest and rock. That's it. A routine job. That's what I thought. I was about 40 minutes into the flight when the monitor caught something. A glint. Sunlight bouncing off a surface that had no business being out there. I pulled the drone around and brought it lower. There was a cabin. Small, tucked right against the ridge, half swallowed by the tree line. But here's the thing. It didn't look abandoned. The wood was dark and sealed, like it had been treated recently. The windows were spotless. Not the cloudy, cracked glass of a ruin. Clean. Like someone had wiped them down that morning. I pulled up the map overlay on my tablet. Solid green. Unbroken forest. The cabin didn't exist according to every data source I had. I told myself it was probably some off-grid survivalist setup. Built recently, not yet logged in any system. It happens sometimes. But the architecture looked 50 years old. The roofline, the porch joinery, the way the whole structure sat into the hillside. Nothing about it said recent. I brought the drone down to about 20 feet. Closer. That's when I noticed the front window. It was huge. A full picture window, the kind you'd see in a suburban house, not a backcountry cabin. Wrong for the location, wrong for the era. I tilted the gimbal to look inside. There was a desk, a laptop, monitor equipment arranged in a specific way I recognized without being able to explain why. And sitting at the desk, back to the window, was a man in an orange hoodie. I stared at the logo on the back of that hoodie. My hands went cold. It was a drone racing club I'd belonged to 3 years ago. Small club, maybe 40 members at its peak. The hoodie was a limited run. I still had mine. I was wearing mine. Right then, standing in the middle of the woods with my controller in my hands. I moved the drone until the lens was almost touching the glass. The man inside slowly turned around. He was holding a DJI controller. And on my screen, I saw my own face. Not a reflection. The lighting inside the cabin was completely different from outside. Warm and yellow against the gray afternoon. And the version of me sitting in that room looked wrong. Hollowed out. The kind of exhausted that doesn't come from a bad night's sleep. The kind that comes from something longer. Something worse. I watched myself on the screen look up at the drone. And then the vertigo hit, sudden and total, like the ground had shifted 6 inches to the left. I pulled my eyes away from the tablet and looked up. A white quadcopter was hovering 18 inches from my face. Right inside the cab of my truck. Then it vanished. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the controller. I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing, fast and shallow, like I'd been running. The tablet feed dissolved into static. GPS lock, dead. I hit return to home. Nothing. Signal completely gone. Drone gone. I hiked out to the clearing. Took me 20 minutes through dense undergrowth, following the GPS coordinates I'd logged before the feed cut out. I knew exactly where the cabin should have been standing. There was nothing there. Rotted stumps, a few scattered pine needles. The ground undisturbed. No foundation marks, no cleared earth, no sign that anything had ever been built on that spot. I stood in the middle of that empty clearing for a long time. When I got back to the truck, I pulled up the flight logs. The GPS coordinates for the cabin are pointing to a location that doesn't correspond to any real position on any coordinate system I've ever worked with. The numbers are formatted correctly. They just don't map to anywhere that exists. Like the data generated correctly and then broke, the exact moment I saw my own eyes looking back at me through the glass. I've been sitting in this truck for 2 hours now. I keep pulling up the flight logs and staring at those coordinates. Trying to find the error. Trying to find the rational explanation that makes all of this collapse back into something I can file a report about. There isn't one. The cabin was there. The hoodie was real. The face in the window was mine. And whatever version of me was sitting in that room, he looked like someone who had been there for a long time. Someone who had stopped expecting to leave. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what saw me back. What I know is this: the satellite maps show nothing but forest. The coordinates in my logs point to nowhere. And somewhere out in those pines, my drone is either sitting in an empty clearing, or it's still hovering. Still watching something. There's a low buzzing sound coming from the roof of the cab. It's been there for 20 minutes. I don't want to get out and look. The police think my house is sitting in the middle of an empty Iowa cornfield. But right now, a tree branch is breaking through my bathroom window. I woke up on the forest floor. No memory of walking outside. No shoes. No explanation. Just trees. Towering over me. Silent. In the absolute certainty that every single one of them was watching. I held my breath. The only sound in that entire forest was my own heartbeat. That's when something exhaled against the back of my neck. Warm, wet. It smelled like rot and wet soil, and something older than both. And I ran. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Eric, and I should never have moved to Iowa. My parents thought I was losing my mind, leaving the crowded Rhode Island coast for the empty fields of the Midwest. My dad laughed. "You'll die of boredom out there." But an aerospace company had offered to double my salary, and out here, that kind of money actually buys you a home. So I went. The neighborhood was brand new. 2 houses built, 6 lots down from each other, surrounded by fresh asphalt that hadn't seen a single winter yet. Sidewalks so clean you could eat off them. 6 minutes down the road, a Quick Star, a Taco Bell, a Walmart. The whole development felt like an outpost, a small human claim carved into flat, open farmland. And that openness, it got to me, more than I expected. For a city kid, all that empty space felt wrong, like being exposed. Like standing in the middle of a field with nowhere to hide, and something far away, slowly noticing you. My house backed up to about half an acre of yard. Beyond that, miles of flat farmland. And way off in the distance, barely visible on the horizon, a small patch of woods. I didn't think much about those trees. Not at first. It was a Saturday morning. Bathrobe, coffee, book. The kind of quiet morning I'd moved here for. I wasn't even looking at the view. I saw it in my peripheral vision. I put the book down. The woods at the back of the horizon, they were bigger. Not taller, wider. Like they'd quietly doubled in size while I wasn't paying attention. I walked up to the glass and squinted into the distance. Has that always been like that? I stood there longer than I should have, staring at those trees. And then I did what any rational person does when reality feels slightly off. I talked myself out of it. Different angle, different light. I hadn't been looking out those windows much anyway. The view made me uncomfortable. I must have just remembered wrong. Forests don't grow overnight. That evening, while I made dinner, I glanced outside again. The sun was low, and in that dying orange light, the tree-line had moved. Not by a mile, but enough. Enough that I stood at the back door for a long time, one hand on the handle, the mac and cheese going soft in the pot behind me. Must be the lighting. That night I dreamed of a forest so thick it pressed against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. And somewhere in the dark, something laughed. Not human laughter. A sound that came from the ground itself. I woke up the next morning and stood in front of the wall of windows. The horizon was gone. Miles of flat farmland vanished. In its place, a dense wall of trees stretching as far as I could see in every direction. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and just stood there. My neighbor, S. The Peterson, S. were the only people around. D. Elderly couple, E. Retired farmer, S. Mrs. Peterson had brought me banana bread when I first moved. I waited for their truck to come back from check. H. Then jaw dove. R. Mr. Peterson came to the door with a patient smile. E. Which woods? He sighed. D. When I pointed toward the tree line. E. I blink. D. All of I. T. The whole horizon. He look. D. Squint. D. Then looked back at M. E. And I could see I. T. The subtle shift in his expressio. N. The careful neutrality of someone recalibrating how to speak to yo. You. So, N. As long as we've lived her, E. There's been nothing out that way but Marison's field. He inched back toward his door as he said I. T. We'll try to stop by late. R. Okay? And then he was gone. I went home and opened Google Earth. Typed in my address. Zoomed out. Nothing. No forests. Not for 20 miles in any direction. 2 years ago. Nothing. 5 years. 10 years. Nothing. A handful of trees scattered here and there. That's it. I went to the windows and raised my phone to take a picture. Evidence. Proof. When I looked at the photo, my stomach dropped. Everything was clear. The room, the window frame, the deck outside. But where the tree line should have been, a gray blur. Like corrupted film. Like something that couldn't be photographed. I went outside and took another. Same thing. It was like the camera was capturing the reality everyone else saw. While my eyes were trapped in the nightmare. The trees were there. I could feel them. But nothing could record them. Over the next week, the forest moved closer every single day. By Friday, it was at the edge of my property. The open Midwest I'd moved to was gone. The neighborhood now looked like 2 houses swallowed by endless woodland. Driving to work meant weaving between trunks that hadn't been there yesterday, branches dragging against the windows. Dense, green, impossibly alive, but dead in every other way. No birds, no insects, no sound of any kind from the undergrowth. Just silence. And the feeling, constant and crawling, that every single tree was tracking me. I stopped leaving for anything except work, burned through my sick days, then my vacation days. I called my parents, asked them to visit, offered to fly them out. They arrived 2 days later in an Uber that weaved through the forest like it was navigating a perfectly normal suburban street. My mom walked into the house, looked out at the wall of trees pressing against the glass. and said, "Oh my, what a wonderful view. You can really see for miles." My dad loved it. They walked the neighborhood every evening. What they saw is fresh sidewalks and open streets. What I watched from the window was two people strolling deep into a dense, silent forest. And then one night, I saw it. Movement. In the underbrush, maybe 30 feet behind them, keeping pace. I threw open the front door. "Mom. Dad. Dinner's ready. Come back now." I watched them turn and walk toward me. Whatever was in the brush, it followed them. All the way to the porch steps. When they came up the stairs, a cold wind pushed in from the undergrowth behind them. My mom rubbed her arms. "Oh, it's getting chilly." I begged them to stay longer. My dad said they had to get home. And that was that. I was too ashamed to tell them the truth. Too afraid of the look they'd give me. But I need you to understand something. I have touched these trees. Crushed the leaves in my hands and smelled them. Burned branches in the fire pit and watched them blacken and curl. They are real. They exist. And they exist in a way that normal trees don't. Aware, intentional, patient. The night after my parents left, the forest woke up. A low groaning filled the air, the sound of massive wooden structures shifting under pressure. Like the whole forest was stretching after sitting still for too long. It continued until sunset. Then silence swallowed everything again. I woke up outside. I already told you what that was like. The cold ground, the moonlit trees, the stillness. And the thing behind me. I ran for the light coming from my house, made it inside, locked every door, every window. Then I packed a bag and sat in the dark, waiting for sunrise. At 6:45 a.m., I backed out of the garage. The trees had thickened overnight, barely room to drive. I bobbed and weaved between trunks that I could have sworn weren't there an hour earlier. And then, directly in front of me, a sapling punched up through the asphalt. In less than a second, it was a full tree. I didn't have time to stop. The airbag hit me like a wall. And then there was nothing. When I came to, blood was running down my face. My body felt like it had been wrung out. I climbed out of the wreckage and looked around. The path I'd driven was gone. New trees filled it edge to edge, like the car had never been there. I walked back. It took a long time. The forest kept growing around me, little weeds curling around my ankles if I stopped too long. By the time I found my house, vines had already crept up the white exterior walls, moss spreading across the siding like a stain. I got inside. Locked the door. The house began to moan. I'm in the bathroom now. Writing this as fast as I can. I can hear windows cracking in the other rooms. A few have already shattered, branches pushing through like fingers. The floor shifts under my feet, and somewhere below me I can hear roots working through the foundation. The walls bow inward every few minutes, like the house is being slowly squeezed. I don't think I'm getting out of here. And the hardest part, the thing I keep coming back to, sitting here in this collapsing bathroom, is that no one is coming. Not because they don't care. Because to everyone else, there's nothing wrong. My parents saw a beautiful view. My neighbors saw empty fields. If you pulled up this address on Google Maps right now, I promise you'd see a quiet subdivision with clean sidewalks and open sky. You wouldn't see this. You wouldn't see me. I left Rhode Island for a house I could be proud of. I turned down my parents, who told me to stay. I drove into the flattest, most open state I could find, because I wanted space. Because I wanted to breathe. The roots are in the walls now. Tell my parents I wasn't crazy. I think they've been waiting for me specifically.